Welcome to another edition of Around with Randall, your weekly podcast on making your nonprofit more effective for your community. And here is your host, the CEO and founder of Hallett Philanthropy, Randall Hallett.
It's a great day for our conversation. Hope it is a great day for you as well. And thank you for joining me, Randall, on this edition of Around with Randall. I had an interesting conversation with actually a couple clients who were talking about their challenge in moving relationships forward because it was quote unquote summertime and they're busy. And more importantly, they're not near. They've gone to the lake house or they've gone to cooler climates or they're in the mountains. And I thought, wait a minute, if I preach, if we talk about that actually as gift officers and nonprofit organizations, we have more control in the relationship than we realize, than having the excuse of, well, we just don't have time, or they're too far away, we don't know what to do, isn't really an excuse. So today we want to take apart this mythology of, well, it's summertime, so we shouldn't be engaged. Maybe you listen to this and you are in the northern part of a climate zone and people go south and they're getting out of the cold weather, and the same principles apply. But since it's summer, we'll take it from this particular perspective. What do I hear? Why is it that this is so challenging? First and foremost, I hear most often, and particularly as we have seen inflation and pressures on our particular budgets, is, well, we don't have a travel budget. And I'm going to say that here and then come all the way back to it at the very end when we talk about the tactical. So let's put that on hold. But I also hear other things. Well, they're going to come back. I think so. It may be true, but I'm not sure it's a very good reason not to consider what cultivation, stewardship, engagement you should be doing while they're gone. And again, I'm not saying for like 4 days. I'm saying that there's an elongated period of time where the person or family or individuals might go. Well, they're busy when they're in these other locations. I'm sure they don't sleep 24 hours a day, but I think there's a question of, is that really logical? We'll talk about that in a second. The last, they're busy. Well, I'm busy. So in the next podcast or two, we're going to talk about petting the cat backwards and my issues with what's taking some of our time away from building more meaningful relationships. But the point is that the most likely way to increase your philanthropy's individual relationships, and if you're not in direct involvement with the people who can make the biggest difference in that individual philanthropy, then my question is, how are you maximizing the opportunity that you have? So the excuses of the three, and we'll come back to the budget at the very end, is, well, they'll come back. They're busy. I'm busy. Okay. I mean, I hear people say it, and that's kind of what drives me crazy, what led me to this podcast. Let's talk about the realizations based on all of those. The first thing is, particularly if they're gone for longer periods of time, they have options. And I think we can break this out into two distinct subcategories. Number one, they could replace you as whatever it is that you do with other like nonprofits at the other location. Is that something you are willing to take a chance on? If it's healthcare, they have hospitals most likely where they are. If you're, let's say, social service and food insecurities or homelessness challenges, my guess is, based on what we read and see across the United States, this other location probably has similar challenges. That's a parallel replacement. I also would say that as life goes on, things happen that cause us to reconsider what we do every day. We talk about this in the healthcare environment more than any other because of grateful patients. What the data has shown is that to begin a realistic, grateful, patient conversation or family conversation, that unless it's a major neurological issue where they're learning to rewalk or something of that nature, or hospice, which there is a delay, because obviously there's a mourning process, that the data says, even in the middle of cancer treatments, as an example, you got 30 to 45 days to begin that relationship. Doesn't mean you're going to ask in that period. Well, I want to take that out of healthcare and apply it to anywhere else. If you're not building the relationship, their affinity, which is the thing inside that drives action for human beings, the connection that we have. And remember, we always talk about 80 to 90% should be affinity. It should be likelihood, not wealth. That if we really want to create or capitalize on affinity, that when we let it go away, people make other decisions based on new affinities, new experiences. And so if you're not staying in touch in a meaningful way, and I don't mean every day, then you're allowing the possibility of something else, it's not even in the same area, build affinity because of their experiences. So they have options is number one. Number two, distance in philanthropy does not equate to the heart growing fonder. It drives me crazy when I look at portfolios of gift officers and they say, well, this is a really good prospect. And I look and I can run the reports and I see that the last action was 2 years ago. And it's actually legitimate. It's not that they've been forgetting to put things in the CRM. They haven't had any contact. What kind of prospect is that? I mean, you got to be kidding me. If the data says that people's passions generically might adjust as they go, and in particular, if there are others that do similar things to you and they have a better connection to those individuals you want connection with and to keep, then it's absolutely it's the A equals B, B equals C. So A is equal, gotta equal C. If you don't have interaction with them, they're going to find places that meet that passion they have to do what they want to do. And it may not be you. And so this idea of both replacement and fondness growing just isn't true in philanthropy. You have to want to engage. Yes, I know they're busy, but they're busy when they're home. If they make time for you and you make it meaningful, there'll be time for you when they're gone. Again, not a 3-day vacation, but a longer period of time. And if you're too busy with things that aren't driving revenue, then you're not allowing yourself, the department, the foundation, the organization to do the things that are going to generate the most amount of money. And so if you've got 9 special events in the summer and nobody has a chance to go see anybody on a one-on-one basis other than saying hello at the golf tournament, the 3-on-3 basketball tournament, the bowling tournament, the poker run, whatever else that you do, pet the cat backwards coming up here in a podcast or two, man, you are leaving opportunity on the table. And so the excuses and the realizations, when we push them together, say, you just simply cannot allow large amounts of time as we see a decreasing number of people being philanthropic. And our model is changing to a 95-5 model. 5% of our people make up 95% of our dollars. Then the 5% that you do identify and begin relationships with or have relationships with, well, it's darn important that you keep them. So if we agree that allowing people to go away for months at a time and having no regular interaction with them is not a good idea, and we now maybe can think about it more tactically as to why, let's get into the tactics of the positive. What should you do? So there's 5 different ways in which you can look at, and then we'll come back all the way to the end about the kind of the financial budget piece. 5 things that I think you should be doing when you're in the middle of cultivation, in the middle of stewardship, certainly in a solicitation, to build more deeply connected relationships with your best prospects. I will say before getting to that, that this is not qualification's hard. It's hard enough when they're there. When you're trying to qualify by distance, if you're not going, it's really, really, really hard. And so understand, I'm really talking about maintaining and building existing relationships, even if they're just beginning, but there's a beginning. So the first thing is, and I think that the pandemic has helped us out a great deal with this in terms of illuminating, shining a light on an option. Virtual events, when done correctly, are incredibly easy and incredibly powerful. Now, the word event sometimes is misconstrued. So I want to be very clear what I'm referring to. I am not referring to a virtual gala. I am not referring to a virtual, although I don't know how this would be done, golf tournament. Events is about, when done correctly, more of a one-on-one or informational flow to a unique, selected, special group of people. Let me give you an example. Maybe if once or twice, let's say during the summer, you happen to be in, I'll pick Dallas, Texas, for lack of a better area, and you got a whole bunch of people that go up to the mountains in Colorado, into Montana, into Minnesota, into Michigan, the Upper Peninsula, or up into the Northeast, into Vermont, New Hampshire, places like that. And they're gone from May to September. Could you do two? That doesn't have to be every day. Two CEO briefings or unique physician ability to demonstrate what they do, or have a outreach of continuing education that's unique to them. If you're an educational unit, doing something that's very easy to produce, doesn't take a lot of time, but has value. It has to be exclusive, and it can't take 6 weeks to put on each time. So if you're an educational institution, you want to make it educational. If you're a healthcare organization, you want to make it educational, maybe related to healthcare. If you're social services, maybe it's just an update of what we're doing and what we're seeing. Let's take food insecurity and food bank. How much food's going out? What we're trying to accomplish? What's going on? The reason this works is twofold. Number one, it's immediate. And number two, it can be recorded. It can be transcribed. The video element of this is great live because you get interaction. I think that's terrific. Short, not 6 hours, 30 minutes. It's a touch point. But the ability to record and then send the hyperlink and give people more options to watch it. Maybe they're playing golf. When you want to do it at 2 o'clock, no problem. We'll send you the hyperlink. Remember, this is not how you want to ask them for money. This is not how you want to really focus on that specific passion point that they have as you try to discover in the deeper parts of cultivation what you should be asking for. It's a touch point to continue and build connectivity. So virtual events is something to consider. Number two is for them to read something. You might think, what, a book? No, a lot simpler. But let me give you a couple examples. So I've come to believe over time in listening to people I trust and to watching the gift officers that I think of the most. And I think back on what I've done and the people I've led and where there was success. Back to something I say probably all too often. If you ask somebody for money, you're going to get advice. If you ask them for advice, you'll eventually get money. Give them something to give their opinion about. So maybe it's, hey, we're working on this kind of mini capital campaign. I'm not asking for any money. I know you're on vacation, but while you're at the beach or while you're sitting by the lake, would you read this 2-page document and give me some feedback? They don't have to be in front of you. Easy email. Most people read it on their phone or iPad, maybe print it off on a printer. Pretty easy to do. Maybe it's we're trying to figure a way to have our board be more interactive with the community. We'd love to give you a couple of people that we just would like your opinion on. Could you tell us a little bit more about them? Or could you recommend how we might get in touch with them? If you ask their opinions, you'll be surprised. And if you don't make it too complicated and too arduous, onerous, they're going to probably, if you're engaged with them, most people like to be asked what they think. They like to think their opinion is valued. The second thing that you can do when you talk about reading something is give them an impact. I'll call it report, good news. I wouldn't make it report has a 50-page connotation. What you're trying to do is keep them connected to whatever emotional connection or tie that they have with the organization that you hopefully have discovered before this moment. If they are truly an emotional donor, then keeping connection to the outcomes that you're involved with, the people that are affected. Maybe you can combine one and two. You can ask their opinion by saying, we want to do a story on Bob and Cindy because they were affected by what we do, and you are such a big part of that. Would you tell us what you think about this impact story? Number two, have them read something. Keep in mind what you're doing. Number three, I know this sounds stupid. Call them. This last week, I've realized there were a number of people that I've not had as much contact with that are longtime professional and personal friends. And so I made a list and I said, I'm going to reach out. I started texting them like, hey, it has been way too long. It's been 6 months. I think the world of you. I don't want anything other than just to hear your voice. Is there time we could chat? And literally 7 people I've done that with, 7 have gotten back to me saying, I agree. I'd love to chat. Now, I'm not even asking them for anything. I just want to hear their voice because they're people I enjoy and respect and think the world of. That should work with anybody. So text them, call them. Hey, I'd love just to catch up. You've been gone for 3 months. How's it going? You having a good time? Grandkids come up? How's the lake? So contact them, call them. Number 4, if you have a process where you have an advisory committee, they can join by Zoom, whether it's a board committee or it's a advisory committee inside the organization. So like in education, their dean's council or kitchen cabinet or something of that nature. This ongoing nature, you shouldn't take a long period of time for 3 or 4 months. Say, hey, we're not going to meet. Nope. We're going to do this and we want you to be involved. We're going to make it convenient and we can record it so you can watch it if you can't join us because you are on a longer stay away from us. Creating opportunities through process. By the way, they may give some pretty good advice if they're advisory committee. Allows people to feel connected even when they're not right next to you. The 5th, and this is the simplest, find a way to say thank you personally. Send them a note if you can get their address or if their mail is forwarded. Send them a card. Reach out on the 4th of July, which is coming up, or on Memorial Day, or on a holiday, or hey, just because they're gone doesn't mean that their feelings of how they look at their life aren't important. And so you recognizing those key moments, a child's birthday, their anniversary, whatever, doesn't stop just because they go away. So the 5, virtual events with events being exclusively driven, exclusively thought of. Number 2 is giving them something to read, asking their opinion, to be involved in some way, shape, or form. Just calling them and saying, hey, I missed talking with you. How are you doing? What's going on? You having fun? Having processes in place for advisory committees or ongoing advisory process and still meeting when things are going during the summer or during the winter when they're away are still critically important. And finally, recognizing the moments of their life in a meaningful way. Those are the 5 things that you can do right now to keep in touch with people. And I want to come back for 50 seconds, 60 seconds on the back end for what I promised. Budget. There is no replacement for going to see people. There just isn't. And I'm working with an organization who we did some analysis and we found out that they have donors that are connected that do not live and are not near the organization. And we were able to very quickly, by just doing some basic data stuff, 3 minutes, figure out who were the ones who had the greatest potential and where they lived above certain dollar figures. We found 8 places. And we sat down as I sat down with them and said, look at these 8 places that are away from you. 3 or 4 were drivable. 4 will probably need to fly. And I said, why aren't you going to see them? We don't have a budget. One $10,000 gift from anybody in this groupings. And these are places with 10, 20, 30 people, donors with high enough propensity above $10,000 to possibly give more. One $10,000 gift pays for the whole program. So what you're telling me is you don't have money to go actually raise money. And that's foolish. Well, it changed the conversation. And now we're in the conversation with the CFO saying, if you don't want more philanthropy, then so be it. But the real question is, are you going to be the one to hold this up? When we showed him the data, he was like, I can't deny this. Now, we're talking about how much, when, all those things. You got to go fight, and you got to use data to your advantage. You got to use opportunity to your advantage. You have to say, if we don't go to these places, these people are gone for a period of time, and we lose contact, and we can't afford that. You want more money in philanthropy? We agree with that, but there's some basics of what we do. You got to be respectful. You got to use data to your advantage. You got to be able to show it so it's simple. And you're not going to be able to go everywhere you want to go. But if you're not fighting to get in front of your donors, if they go away and there's enough of them and they're high enough connection as well as opportunity, then you're causing yourself some grief. And if you need to, I'm not saying do an end run, but get that CEO involved. CEOs have a different perspective, even though they don't fully understand what we do, than the CFO. I'm not saying CFOs are bad, but they have a protective, expense-driven kind of vantage point. We're more about opportunity. And I tend to find CEOs, once they understand that, they are too. So go fight. Respectfully, appropriately, professionally. But just don't give in. Don't forget, check out the blogs at hallettphilanthropy.com, 2 per week, 90 seconds. And if you'd like to reach out to me, it's podcast@hallettphilanthropy.com. The more we're engaged as we move into the summer and into the fall here in 2024 and at any time, the more we're engaged with the people who can make the biggest difference, the more we're going to benefit not only ourselves, but most importantly, the organizations we represent. I think the challenge is that we don't know what's coming. There's a sense of uncertainty. This is where philanthropy is at its best, because we can pivot and move quickly. We are the gap between government and kind of the free enterprise capitalistic system. We fill holes, and which brings me right to my favorite saying. Some people make things happen. Some people watch things happen. Then there are those who wondered what happened. Philanthropy is all about filling the holes. They're being people, you professionally, people you partner with who are donors, who make things happen for the people in the places that are wondering what happened. My hope is you feel like this is worthwhile, because it is. It's a difference maker, which means what you do every day is creating immense value for people and things in the community that are wondering what happened. If that doesn't make you feel good about what you do every day, how to get better, to use some of the things we talk about in this podcast, the tactical aspects of being better at what we do, then I don't know what will, because this is worthy. Helping others, philanthropy, love of mankind is a tremendous way to spend your career. And thus, I hope you feel that each and every day, even in those challenging times. I'll look forward to seeing you next time, right back here on the next edition of Around with Randall. And don't forget, make it a great day.